Hi, this is Pastor Tim Marinelli of Emmanuel OPC in Castle Rock. Our church, in cooperation with Creation Ministries International, is pleased to present a lecture by Dr. Robert Carter, national speaker and geneticist, addressing the topic, Dinosaurs and Fossils, Amazing Evidence for Creation. He will provide compelling information and an explanation of the science that supports biblical creation. We hope you enjoy this lecture. If you have questions or comments, please contact me through our website, emmanuelopc.com. Have a blessed day.
New Testament, with John the Baptist scene, and what did you come out in the wilderness to see? A reed shaken by the wind. And it's rather humbling. I don't know that I know anything. I don't know that I know anything about dinosaurs. There's more questions than I have answers. But I have spent a lot of time thinking about it. And so what I'm going to try to do is tease out some of the more important things and see if we can be excited and encouraged and maybe admonished and maybe learn a few things and maybe think that the Bible is more real when we're done than when we started. I also noticed, I did a quick head count, I noticed there's about the same number of people underneath the age of 18 than as over the age of 18 in this room. That is very exciting. There are times when I go to a church and I call it the Sea of Gray, and your heart just sinks. Because that is a church that has not reached the next generation. So all you graybeards, I'm not talking to you. Plus, the 10-year-olds know more about dinosaurs than you do anyway. Here we go. All I'm going to do is ask questions. Let's see if we can answer the questions. You ready? Question number 1. What is a dinosaur? How is a dinosaur different than an iguana? I remember as a kid, reading those accounts in the Bible of people that lived for a long time and saying, oh, maybe if an iguana lived for like 300 years, it would be a T-Rex. No, they're different. Whether 2 legs or 4, dinosaurs stand up. The other reptiles don't. Now, snakes have no legs, but iguanas, crocodiles, turtles, their legs stick out to the side. So when an alligator wants to walk, he does a push-up, he walks, and then he rests on his belly. But dinosaurs stood. That's one of the very distinguishing characteristics of this unique group of reptiles. They also have different holes in their skull. But once you see the different holes, oh yeah, and you can instantly see it. I just don't have a slide to show you. Anyway, did you just learn something? Okay, next question. What happened to the dinosaurs? We know they existed. We've got tons of bones right around here. They're dinosaur bones. They're not here now. In fact, I wrote an article for creation.com. Dinosaurs are almost certainly extinct. Now, I want to say dinosaurs are extinct, but my boss made me tone it down a little bit. Creationists have been talking for decades about sightings of dinosaur-like creatures in remote places. Mokele Mbembe is supposedly a small sauropod that lives in a Congo area, and there's dinosaur sightings in the South Pacific Islands. And well, I said, these reports are 30 years old, and none of them have been confirmed. It's time to let it go. It might have been true. There might be cultural memories of people seeing dinosaur-like creatures, but they're not there now. And now that we have remote satellite sensing and high-res pictures of you can see animals from space on Google Earth. There's no evidence that dinosaurs are still alive. I would love to find one. But as a scientist, I have to say, yes, here's some anecdotal things, but even as a creationist, I'm already at a disadvantage. I'm already scoffed at and blah, blah, I cannot use questionable information. I can't hold on to something I just desperately want to be true. I need to let it go. So I suggest we let dinosaurs living go until otherwise. And if we find one, I'll be the first person online at the zoo. What's the evolutionary story about dinosaurs? Now, we're going to have to use evolutionary numbers in this talk, because if we want to understand this question, we have to know what the other side is saying, right? So what's the evolutionary story? What killed off the dinosaurs? A big asteroid. Does anyone know how long ago in the evolutionary world that supposedly was? Boom, boom, yes, 65 million years ago. Big meteor supposedly strikes the Yucatan Peninsula. Now, I'm not saying a meteor did not strike the Yucatan Peninsula. There's some evidence for it, some. I just don't think it was 65 million years ago. Does anyone know the geological age that was? It's at the end of the Mesozoic. It's the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. It's the end of the Cretaceous era. Don't ever ask me to watch science fiction with you, because I will point out that, all those dinosaurs in Jurassic Park are actually Cretaceous. But Cretaceous Park doesn't have a ring, so. Okay. I want to take that statement, though, about the extinction of the dinosaurs, and I want to show you a few things. I want to show you a few things that survived the extinction of the dinosaurs. Turtles. Turtles have great shells, so they are easy to spot in the rocks. Therefore, we have lots of turtle fossils that we found. Crocodiles sailed, right? They appear in the fossil record before dinosaurs, and they're alive today. Butterflies. Butterflies? Yeah, butterflies, one of the most environmentally sensitive organisms on the planet. Now, dinosaurs are still a mystery, because even if a meteor strike killed them off, it's still a mystery, because there were big dinosaurs and little dinosaurs, northern dinosaurs and southern dinosaurs, and tropical dinosaurs and non-tropical dinosaurs, and herbivores and carnivores, and on and on. There was such a diversity of dinosaurs. It's very difficult to think that one environmental thing killed off just the dinosaurs and not the other groups. So, I don't know what killed the dinosaurs, and neither does anyone else. And the meteor theory is not intellectually satisfying when you put that in context. But it sure sounds good the first time you hear it. And there are certain people that they'll just, we now know 65 million years ago, this big meteor struck the, and it's just, they sound so convincing, and they're so confident about what they're saying. But I like to rethink things. Okay, next question for you. What's a species?
It's a group of organisms that can reproduce.
Ooh, the biological species concept, invented by Ernst Mayr in the 1930s, I believe, a very important evolutionist. Biological species concept. If certain things can reproduce, they're called the same species. So dogs, wolves, coyotes, jackals, and African dingoes, one species. Oh, wait. Those are given different species names. Because in the 1800s, they said these things breed true to type. Coyotes always produce coyotes. So is it something that can interbreed or something that breeds true to type? Or what about in geology? Geologists use a different species altogether, different definition altogether. Here's 13 ceratopsid species. Actually, they're different genera even. Everyone knows Triceratops. Most people don't know Pachyrhinosaurus or Styracosaurus. Protoceratops is not here. Microceratops is not here. There are a lot of different ceratopsids. But they all have some similarities, right? They have a beak, they have a frill, some horns. They're the same basic shape. In fact, I bet a paleontologist could find a toe bone of a dinosaur and say, oh, it's a ceratopsid toe bone. Every bone in their body will be distinct and different from other groups. Just like you can find a horse bone and know it's from a horse and not a camel. And it's obvious once you know what horse bones look like. Okay? How many species are here? Well, it says 11, right? Is it true? I don't know. I can't breed them in a lab. They're not in a zoo. They're dead. Geologists say if two things look different, they're different species. Wait a minute. One species. World's largest dog standing next to the world's smallest dog. Look at the morphological variation in one. In fact, these are gray wolves. They're not coyotes, they're not red wolves. We bred dogs from gray wolves. Also notice, these breeds did not exist 100 years ago. There was a documentary with that famous actor, I don't remember his name right now, I got his picture in my head. He played Charles Darwin. And Darwin's family, they're all happy. They didn't do the grumpy Darwin. They had a happy Darwin. And they had a family dog, and it was a golden retriever. I'm like, ugh. The golden retrievers did not exist in the 1860s. It's a newer breed. Species change quickly. I wrote an article series on creation.com. Species were designed to change. And I gave all the different mechanisms that I could think of that God put into his creation to change and adapt over time. And if he didn't, most species would be extinct. Because the stresses that species have to deal with changes over time. The world today is not the same as it was thousands of years ago. So our brilliant engineer God forethought that. Now some species didn't make it, like trilobites and dinosaurs, but others did. Okay, point is this. We know species change fast. We know that if paleontologists found bones of these animals in the fossil record and didn't know what dogs were, there's no way they would put them in the same species. Because Charles Darwin taught us that species change slowly over millions of years. So putting those thoughts together, there are only about 50 basic kinds of dinosaur. We had the ceratopsid, the duck-billed hadrosaurs, the tank-like ankylosaurs, the stegosaurs, the long sauropods, the meat-eating theropods. There's only about 50 basic kinds. Within each kind, there are many species. In geology, geological species, I don't know how many species there are in reality because I'm a biologist. But if there are only about 50 basic kinds of dinosaurs, it's not that hard to get a grasp on most of the diversity of dinosaurs. It's not. It doesn't take much learning before you get okay, I know the main categories. And then you can drill down and learn about, Pachyrhinosaurus and things like that. But you can get the main categories pretty easily. We okay with that? But we have a challenge. The challenge is the theropods. Almost all dinosaurs eat plants. The theropods, though, Tyrannosaurus rex, that fierce predator stalking the Mesozoic plains. How would he have originally been described? As an herbivore, a carnivore, a scavenger, or an omnivore? Who says carnivore? Who says herbivore? Creation nerd. Who says omnivore? He's the biggest guy. He can eat whatever he wants. Scavenger. Now, some people say scavenger because their teeth weren't anchored very deeply into their jaw. And if he got in a fight, his teeth would rip out. So a T-Rex bite is profoundly powerful only in one direction. And he kind of tearing back and forth, and he's just got gums. Okay. This is a trick question. You know how Jesus, when he was faced with a question, he usually asked a question in return? The Pharisees are like, don't eat. Well, that is a trick question. I would answer this with, originally described according to whom? The evolutionary paleontologist that discovered him in 1800s and gave him the name Tyrant Lizard King, or God? Genesis chapter 1. And God said to Adam, see, I've given you every herb that yields seed which is on the face of all the earth, and every tree whose fruit yields seed to you shall be for food, also to every beast of the earth, to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, in which there's life. I've given every green herb for food, and it was so. Okay, Christian, let me ask you a point-blank question. Yes or no? Did God create all animals to eat plants? Yes. Do we have a problem? Because a lot of animals today don't eat plants. Some animals have to eat meat, like cats. They can't get certain things in the diet if they just eat plants because they're missing a couple of enzymes. If dinosaurs were created to eat plants, why did some eat meat? Honest question, right? Well, let's answer it scripturally. Oh, you going to answer it? Yes, sir. Because of the fall. Boom. Way to go, Mom and Dad. Genesis chapter 3. Adam rebels against God. He eats the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And because of that, God says, cursed is the ground because of you, and pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. You shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, etc. This is a very important passage for New Testament Christianity. I talked a lot about this last night. This is where suffering and death comes from. This is where hunger comes from. Hungry animals will do different things than not hungry animals. Consider your ancestors and what they ate. Ugh. Hungry people will eat anything. And when they're hungry, you tend to start a war and go kill the other people and take their stuff, but that's a long story. There were reports in the early 1900s when the chestnuts, which was the dominant tree in the eastern woodlands, there was a blight and it killed off all the chestnuts. There's almost none left. A couple little pockets that were blight resistant up in the mountains. There's no one, I've never seen a native chestnut tree. I've seen Chinese chestnuts, but I've never seen an American chestnut tree. There were reports of chipmunks running out into the road and eating roadkill because their primary food source disappeared and they were hungry, and those little cute little chipmunk teeth can eat meat. Ew. And we have to be careful because science will rip the rug right out from underneath you when you're not paying attention. Science changes. There was a report several years ago. Carnivorous dinosaurs, or what we thought were carnivorous dinosaurs, actually ate plants. And the way they figured this out was, back in the day, paleontologists would find some dinosaur in a rock and they chisel the bones out and they bring the bones back and set it up in a museum. And everyone go to the museum like, oh, look at the brontosaurus. You know, I've been to a lot of those museums, really cool stuff. But in so doing, they destroyed a lot of world-class bone beds. And now the younger paleontologists today are going and looking at the pieces and saying, that was a mammal. That was a baby dinosaur. There's a bird, and just destroyed. And now, when they find a bone, they don't just chisel it out. They'll do an analysis of the site. And very often they've realized if you step back, you can very often see an image of the animal. In other words, he was buried whole, and he rotted after he was buried and it stayed in the rocks. And sometimes you look and say, wait a minute, there's his heart, there's his liver, there's his stomach. And once they realized that the stomach contents of dinosaurs are buried with the dinosaurs in the rock, they started sampling the stomach contents and looking at it. And lo and behold, most of the theropod dinosaurs, the meat eaters, you know what a theropod is? This is a theropod. You'll never forget that. Most of the theropods' stomachs were packed with plant material. Not only that, I was told, even in college, grasses did not evolve until 35 million years ago. You know, grasses that cover the world today, bamboo to the stuff in your yard. I mean, it's everywhere. I think grasses even live on the Antarctic Peninsula. Maybe. Not sure, but at least everywhere else in the world. Grasses supposedly are new. And yet, when they started analyzing the stomach contents of dinosaurs, they found all the major families of grasses. They're not petrified anywhere else in the fossil record until recently. The fossil record is fickle. Some things were preserved and some things weren't. Okay, now why, though, did some dinosaurs start eating meat? Let me give you an example from the bear world. What do black bears eat in the wild? 99% of their diet is plants. What do polar bears eat? 99% of their diet is meat. They have the same claws. They have the same teeth. A black bear can take a blueberry branch, put it in his mouth, and go pull out all the blueberries and leave the leaves on the stem. Those are amazing teeth. A polar bear can use those same teeth and tear apart a seal. Black bears can take those claws and dig for roots. Polar bear can take those same claws, boom, and pin a seal and then tear it apart. Hey guys, have you ever had to go and hang a picture on the wall? And you know, you got that little box with all the little things that you have to stick in the drywall, the little plastic things with the screw. And you have to poke a hole in the drywall and then put the plastic thing in there and then screw the screw in, right? And you always forget to bring your hammer, don't you? And so what do? Well, you hold the screw up, and you take your screwdriver, you turn it around, and you go pop, 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 pop. And you use your screwdriver as a hammer.
We're dinosaurs.
What?
We're dinosaurs.
We're dinosaurs? Have you never done that? Okay, all right. I know I've done it. That is something, You've heard of the phrase adaptation, right? That's when you take something and you adapt it for new use. Exaptation is when you take a tool and use it for something it wasn't designed for. Like hammering a screw into a wall with a screwdriver. That's not what the screwdriver was designed for, but it works just fine. Exaptation applied to bears. Bears are spreading out on the earth after the flood. They go north, east, south, and west. East, Himalaya Mountains. West, Europe. South, desert. North, Siberia. And bears are exposed to different ecological pressures. There are some mutations happening in their coat genes. The white gene, the white fur of a polar bear is an adaptation. It's a very good one. You don't want to be a black bear on ice, but you don't want to be a white bear in a forest. That's adaptation. Exaptation is the fact that these bears are using the things that God gave them in very different ways to survive. I bet a polar bear could do just fine on a plant-based diet. I bet a black bear could do just fine on a meat-based diet, just like human beings can do just fine on either diet. Now, it might be too late for polar bears, but polar bears aren't that old as a species, even for the evolutionists. They actually, the mitochondrial DNA pegs them to Ireland. They came from Irish cave bears, who probably weren't white. Strange. But, you okay with that? Let's move on here. We do know that a lot of dinosaurs are eating meat. This is a T-Rex tooth embedded in a duck-billed dinosaur tailbone. And it healed up around the tooth, meaning the dinosaur survived the T-Rex attack and was walking around the rest of his life in a tremendous amount of pain because of the tooth in his spine. Yuck. But that's cool at the same time. Okay, another question for you. I've got like 3 hours of material here. Most of it's blanked out. I'm going to skip over some of the easier stuff. You know, were dinosaurs in the Garden of Eden? Were dinosaurs on the earth before the flood? Men see dinosaurs. I'm going to skip over some of that and hit some of the highlights like this. If God created dinosaurs, if dinosaurs are on earth with Adam and Eve, and on the earth before that, they would have been around at the time of the flood, and they would have gotten killed in the flood. So the question is there any evidence that dinosaurs died in a big flood? You've actually seen it. The evolutionary paleontologist calls it the dead dinosaur posture. And for a long time, it was an enigma, because when animals die on the ground, they don't do that. But a couple of years ago, some scientists were studying chickens. You put a dead chicken in water, it does that. It goes, what is that? Why would it do that? Well, a lot of long-necked animals and long-tailed animals have a thing called the ligamentum elasticum, the elastic ligament. It's a rubber band. It runs from the base of the skull, down the spine, and down the tail. So chickens and dinosaurs didn't need muscles to hold their head up. They had a rubber band. So boing, 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 that's a really good design. But that rubber band is always pulling against the force of gravity. What happens if you drown the animal? It doesn't weigh as much in water. So the natural response of an animal with that structure that's drowned is to curl up backwards. So now the evolutionary paleontologists are saying the dead dinosaur posture, which we see in tons and tons of dinosaurs, is evidence of drowning, which explains why dinosaurs are usually buried with fish and clams. Wow. Now, the one dinosaur that doesn't curl like this is the ankylosaurs, the tanks. They're armor-plated tanks because they can't do that. But ankylosaurs are usually found upside down, because if you take a top-heavy animal and you drown it, it'll flip over as it sinks. Oh, cool. So, Mr. Evolutionary Paleontologist, how come when we find an intact dinosaur, almost always it looks like it was drowned? These are land animals. Cool question, huh? Okay, another question for you. Are dinosaurs in the Bible? Is the word dinosaur in the Bible? Not in English. And it couldn't have been in English until at least 1841. The Bible had been translated multiple times into English by that point. There's a word in Hebrew, tanin, which is very difficult. It sounds like dragon, but is often translated jackal or sea monster or something like that. Translators really struggle over that word, and any modern translation team is not going to dare to put the word dragon or dinosaur in the Bible. Just saying. But if you ever read the original King James Bible, where all the U's and V's are switched and there's big S's in the middle of the word, it's beautiful. But in the beginning, there's a document called From the Translators to the Reader. If you want to understand how a group of very godly men struggled and wrestled over the Word of God to bring it into English, it is a wonderful thing to read. But in there, they say there are a lot of minerals and animals that we don't know what they are. We know from context it's a mineral or an animal, but it's only used once in Hebrew. Now, over the last 400 years, we've learned a lot more about Hebrew. We have a lot more textual evidence of ancient Hebrew and things like that. But still, some of those words are only used once. So King James might say basilisk. NIV might say ostrich. ESV might say owl. You know what that means? It's an animal. And we might not know what animal it is. So the Bible might inadvertently be describing dinosaurs and we don't even know it. That's an interesting point. However, my favorite example from Scripture is in Job chapter 40. You do realize that Job is a lawsuit? Job sued God. And then God appeared in his own defense. And he asked Job a bunch of science questions. You know that song, "The heavenly storehouse is laden with snow," right? You know that song? That's from Job. It's all these science questions, and then he goes, "Behold, behemoth." Oh, wait a minute. Is that an English word, behemoth? Have you trained yourself that when you see a Hebrew or Greek word transliterated into English, that you translate the word as you're reading? "Behold, the beast of beasts, which I made as I made you." Oh, that's a reference to Creation Week. "He eats grass? He's an herbivore." Cool. "Like an ox. Behold, he's got strength in his loins and power in the muscle of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar." I don't care what translation you use. They all say like a cedar. But that's not very impressive to us. Super not impressive to people that live in Georgia. Cedar trees are little scrubby things that grow up in old fields. You got to keep on hacking them back or you can't mow your grass sometimes. I mean, cedar trees, they're tiny little trees. But to Job, the biggest trees he could have seen were the cedars that lived in his area, like the cedars of Lebanon. If the Bible said he's got a tail like a sequoia, any American would go, "I know exactly what that means." And that's essentially what God did to Job. He's got a tail like the biggest tree you've ever seen. So, scientifically, you cannot say sauropod dinosaurs are being described in Job. However, if you look at all the animals that have ever lived and all the animals alive today, there's only one group of animals that fully fits the description. First of all, the sauropod dinosaurs, the largest dinosaurs, the largest land animals God ever created, deserve the title beast of beasts. Second, they were herbivores. Third, they were strong. And fourth, they got a big old tail. Neat. Now, do you see what I did? I took a question we cannot conclusively answer, and I said, here are the possibilities. And that is something we all have to do with Scripture. I don't like being dogmatic over things I can't be dogmatic over. There are some things that are absolute and unquestionable, period, done, and this is the answer. And other things we can discuss, and it's fun to discuss. Got another question for you. Does Noah have a problem? How can an animal like that fit on the ark? I'll give you several possibilities. Within each kind of dinosaur, there are big species and little species. Ceratopsis is really big, but again, I said earlier, what about Microceratops? What about Compsognathus, who's fully grown, he's chicken-sized? The average full-grown dinosaur was about as big as a pony. The average. Oh. So given a range of species sizes within each group, Noah takes two of each kind. He doesn't have to take the big ones, he could take in the little ones. Or he could take in hatchlings. Biggest dinosaur ever is this big. They actually know. The biggest, until recently, was smaller than ostrich eggs. They just found a couple that were like dinner plate size, but they were thin. thin. I mean, they were like that. The reason they weren't round, like the Fred Flintstone type of egg, because the embryo would suffocate. As the size of the egg expands, the volume goes up with the cube, but the surface area only goes up by the square, and you get proportionally less oxygen per cubic volume inside. And if it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the animal's got to breathe through the shell, and it would die. So to get big, these eggs got flat. Cool. But he could have taken juveniles, teenagers. He doesn't have to take great-great-granddaddy Apatosaurus. In fact, the biggest dinosaurs that ever lived, they can do studies on their bones, sort of like growth rings in a tree, not really growth rings, but they can see growth patterns in the bones. And they realize that the big dinosaurs went through a teenage growth spurt. They were little, and all of a sudden they went, vroom, and they petered off about the age of 30. So the gigantic dinosaurs ever were maybe 30 years old. Oh, that's cool. Also, though, consider this question. How many dinosaurs would Noah have had to take on the ark? How many kinds were there? About 50. What's 50 times 2? About 100. Oh, okay. Whoop-de-doo. All that thing I just said didn't even matter. Even if you had to take the big ones, there's still plenty of room on board the ark for the biggest dinosaurs, with plenty of room left over for all the food and all the water they needed for an entire year. Those calculations have been done. Noah's Ark is absolutely feasible. Now, if you think that boat is too big, the Chinese were building flat-bottom junks the same size as Noah's Ark in the 1600s, and they sailed them across the open ocean and got at least as far as Madagascar. They explored the Philippines. They may even have discovered Australia. And Noah's Ark-sized wooden ships. Just saying. Okay, so we're talking about dinosaurs. We know they're gone. Why are the dinosaurs gone? What happened? Well, a lot of things have gone extinct. Even post-flood, a lot of things have gone extinct. But why specifically the dinosaurs? Well, imagine large animals. The largest land animals to have ever lived are all extinct. We don't have 6-foot-tall penguins anymore. We don't have giant beavers anymore. This is an Andean condor. A modern I've actually held a California condor. Beautiful, amazing bird. Wow, it's huge. But its wingspan was less than the wingspan of one wing of that animal. But wait a second, think about big animals. They need a lot of food. They can't survive droughts. They delay reproduction until they get larger. So given a condor kind, and there's some smaller ones and some bigger ones, if that big one waits 10 years before it finally lays an egg, and yet the smaller ones wait 1 year before it lays an egg, by the time that one lays a single egg, the population is full of small condors, thousands of them. So genetically, all species should be driving to smaller, faster reproducing versions. If the dinosaurs couldn't do that, they would die. If they couldn't handle droughts, they would die. There's radical climate change after the flood. The sea level changed 400 feet after the flood. It was about 80 feet higher than it is today. Then the ice age started. It dropped 300 feet below current, and then the ice melted and it came up 300 feet to today's level. We have droughts in the Bible. Abraham's time, Isaac's time, Jacob's time. There's a lot of environmental changing happening. Okay. If the Bible is true and dinosaurs were on Earth with man, we would expect some evidence for it, right? I know a lot of creationists have talked about this a lot. Some of the information that some people use, I'm not very comfortable with. I want something I can defend, not something that's wishful thinking. So let me give you my two favorites. This is one of my favorites. This is a tomb in a cathedral in England. It's 600 years old. We didn't discover dinosaurs until the 1800s, right? So this is 400 years before we supposedly discovered dinosaurs. And if you look at this, what happened to my laser pointer? Come on, laser pointer. Oh well. If you look at the brass rectangle around the tomb, you can see it's broken away in places, so we don't have the whole thing. But of the places that we have these animals. Look, there's a bat. There's a dog. there's a fish, there's a bird. And that's not just any old bird, that's a wading bird. That dog's got a collar. I mean, whoever drew these things knew what those animals looked like, right? Very close by, maybe my laser pointer will work now. No, weird. Can you see my pointer? Wow, okay, whatever, technology. Very close by is this depiction of something that looks like two sauropod dinosaurs with their necks wrapped around each other. And the guy on the left has spikes on his tail, like Spinosaurus. In fact, this struggling dragon theme is very common in ancient history. Here's one from a Babylonian cylinder seal. Now, if you think these guys are distorted, that wouldn't surprise me, because dinosaurs or dragons became a fish story. The stories get magnified over time. They get more and more distorted, and yet, that's not too much different than Tanistropheus. My second favorite is from Cambodia. Angkor Wat was the largest city on Earth during the height of the Khmer Empire. But a drought happened, and despite all their amazing engineering, they couldn't handle it, and a lot of people died, and the civilization collapsed. And the jungle took it over. But now that the Vietnam War is over and the Khmer Rouge are gone, archaeologists are going back and are hacking back the jungle and re-exposing these things. And there's a top prom temple. There's one particular door frame. There's a couple of people, there's a Buddha thing, there's a water buffalo, it's like a demon-like thing, and then there's... What's your first reaction when you see that? Sure looks like one. Now, its head is a little too big. But notice it's standing upright on his legs. And yet, just around the corner, there's another, I don't have a picture of it, it was more recently discovered, there's another stegosaurus-like creature that looks more like a stegosaur than this one does. But wait a minute. Dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, didn't they? How many of you have seen a picture like this? The age of the dinosaurs. Notice, no grass. We know that's a mistake. Notice, no birds, no mammals. We are constantly treated to images like this, and they're completely and totally wrong. We have found as many species of mammals buried with dinosaurs as we have species of dinosaurs. Things like flying squirrels, platypuses, badgers, beavers, and hedgehogs. Now, that's not a modern flying squirrel. There's a different group, we have the placental mammals, we have the marsupial mammals like kangaroos, and then we have multituberculate mammals. They're extinct. They had bumps all over their teeth, the tubercles. And just like there's like a Tasmanian wolf and there's a tiger, and they look very similar, well, the multituberculates were a whole other group of mammals that have a lot of similarities with the other groups of mammals, like a flying squirrel-like thing. That platypus is twice as big as a mountain platypus, but that's definitely, see the groove in the jaw? That's for the giant nerve that runs the platypus bill, so they can detect electrical signals with their eyes shut in muddy water. That badger-like creature has a baby Psittacosaurus in his stomach. So in the morning of Noah's flood, that mammal ate a dinosaur for breakfast. That beaver-like creature was preserved with his hair. The hedgehog-like, see, the evolutionists can't say hedgehog. Hedgehog-like, not only is the size and shape of a hedgehog, it was also preserved with his hairs, and hedgehogs have unique hairs. They're not porcupines, they're hedgehogs. And they have hairs unlike any other mammal, and that fossil has hedgehog hairs. But look, okay, MA, you know what MA means? Millions of imaginary evolutionary years ago. It's mega annum, millions of years ago. 120, 130, 164. That's before most of the dinosaurs supposedly evolved. So any picture you see with dinosaurs should have tons of mammals and diverse mammals. And yet, what are we told? Oh yes, mammals lived at the end of the dinosaur era. Little mouse or shrew-like sized mammals. After dinosaurs went extinct, that's when all the mammals evolved. And that's not true. How many of you have seen the movie Hidden Figures with Kevin Costner about the African-American ladies doing all the calculations for NASA? What a cool movie. Well, some guy a couple years ago dropped his wife off at this NASA facility in Maryland, and he looks over in the woods and he sees a pile of rocks that were construction debris from when they built the foundations for the building. He goes, huh. So he wanders over into the woods, and he finds one of the most world-class fossil discoveries ever. It's a rock about this big. And on that rock are sauropod footprints, pterosaur footprints, nodosaur footprints, nodosaur coprolites, or preserved dinosaur dung, an osteoderm, which is a bone from a dinosaur's skin, and in blue, mammal footprints. Not only did mammals live with dinosaurs, they lived in the same place as dinosaurs and left their footprints in the same mud puddle. That's cool. Fossils aren't just bones. We can also fossilize behavior. Wow, that's cool. Okay, I would be doing you a disservice if I did not ask the following question. Did birds evolve from dinosaurs? Thank you. Very good answer. Okay, I'm done. I can now leave. However, this is a difficult question to address for this reason. Think of humans. What is the closest living species to humans? Chimpanzees. After that, all the apes. After that, all the placental mammals. After that, all the mammals. After that, all the vertebrates. After that, all of the deuterostomes. Yes, after that, all the animals. I mean, life is hierarchical, and we are in a subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup of a subgroup. Birds cluster with dinosaurs. Birds are more similar to the Manuraptor and dinosaurs than they are to crocodiles, and those are more similar to each other than they are to turtles. And it's okay. God created hierarchically. Okay, I'm fine with that. I have no problem saying that about humans. It's the same exact argument about birds. It doesn't mean they evolved from dinosaurs. It means they're more similar to dinosaurs than any other creature. A lot of the ancient birds have claws on their wings and teeth and a flat breastbone. What's strange, when you eat chicken or turkey, you got to dig the white meat out, right? There's a keel on the breastbone. You know what that's for? It's an anchor point for the chest muscles, and it gives the bird more mechanical advantage and helps it fly. That's one reason why humans will never fly. Even Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't have a strong enough chest to pump wings to get that guy to fly. Plus the rest of him was too heavy anyway. But my point is, humans can't fly, birds can. But the Hoatzin of South America, the stink bird, it also has a flat breastbone. It's the only bird species that has a flat breastbone. And the babies have fully functional wing claws. They can clamber around on the branches with their claws. You know what a wing is? It's a hand. Do you know that? And so birds, their fingers terminate. But some birds, they had claws. Okay, fine. You know, a bat, their wings are their hands. Same with birds. Their arms are wings. It bugs me when I see, How to Train Your Dragon, and they're hexapods. That is four-legged dragons with two wings. Like, oh, come on, man. No, the wings are two of the legs. Come on, everybody. But anyway, just kidding. I'm about to go through very quickly a series of ancient birds. The question is, can feathers be preserved in rocks? Confuciusornis. Notice the wing claw, the long, something else. Birds don't have tails. A peacock doesn't have a tail. Those are feathers. You know what that's the rear end of a chicken. Okay, next time you eat chicken, you're going to do this. You're going to go look at the chicken butt. There's a couple of little bones. It's called a pygostyle. And if a bird has feathers, it's feathers sticking off those little bones. And if the feathers can change shape like a peacock, there's muscles attaching to that little teeny nub on their rear end. Dinosaurs had tails. Like when your lab is happy and he's wagging his tail and he walks past you and he whacks you in the knee. Oh, you stupid dog, man, that hurt. Why does it hurt when the dog's tail whacks you? Because there's bones there. It's an extension of his spinal column. Those are bones. Birds don't have that. Those are feathers. preserved in the rock. Here's another example. Feathers. Oh, something else. A beak. What's the difference between a beak and a jaw? I can't move my upper jaw. Birds can move their upper beak. That's a beak. Reptiles don't have beaks. They have jaws. Here's another one. Feathers, beaks, tail feathers, no tail. Here's another one. Can feathers be preserved in rocks? Absolutely. Feathers. Oh, here's a cool one. The only bird ever found that has an egg inside it. But looking at the egg, there are multiple layers of eggshell. When you stress a bird and don't let it lay an egg, it'll keep on adding layers of eggshell. So the only bird we've ever found with an egg in it was obviously stressed for several days before it finally died. I suspect it survived Noah's flood for a couple of days and got tired and drowned. Here's another one. Again, it's pile of legs. You can see little bird feet sticking down the bottom there. Now, I know that doesn't look very impressive, but the thing about this is its lungs are preserved. Bird lungs are different. When we breathe, we have a diaphragm. We go, we pull air in, we push air out. But the oxygen in the air only gets about this far down. Then the oxygen has to diffuse down into the alveoli, and the carbon dioxide has to diffuse up. We're not very efficient at extracting air. That's why we can't run a 1-minute mile. Humans can't do that. We can't pull enough air out. Reptiles breathe differently. They don't have a diaphragm. They have a liver. It's called a hepatic pump. They move their liver in and out. And that's how they breathe. And it's not very efficient. They pull out less oxygen than we do. But being that they're cold-blooded, they don't need as much oxygen as we do. Birds don't do any of those things. The bird, the air might come in and out the nares of the bird, but when it hits the lung, it goes through the bottom of the lung and comes around the side and goes back out. There's no dead space in a bird lung. They can extract a lot more oxygen. So between the keel and the lung and the light structure, that's what allows birds to fly. So in the evolution of birds from reptiles, the first thing that would have to happen is a hole would have to be poked in the bottom of the diaphragm. Or down the diaphragm. A hole would have to be poked in the bottom of the lung, and then the liver had to kind of get out of the way, and that animal's going to die. There's like an unbridgeable gap between the reptile lung and the bird lung. How do you transition that? And why would you ever go through that transition before you needed oxygen? Because you're not going to need that oxygen until you can fly. So evolution has no foresight. Why would that evolve? It would be wasted on a reptile. And yet birds can do it. I remember as a young man being very convinced that evolution was true. I gave you one example last night. Here's another example that was very convincing to me. It's the family tree of the dinosaurs. If you look at the dinosaurs, here we have the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous era. That's the Mesozoic era. And at the top line there, that would be 65 billion years ago. But look at that. They got the whole family tree goes all the way back to a common ancestor. Case closed, evolution must be true. But look what happens when you cover over all the dotted lines. Oh, wait a minute. There's actually no evolution there at all. There's 50 family sticks. When a dinosaur kind appears, it might speciate, but then that kind disappears. There are no missing links. There's not just a missing link between man and monkeys. There's missing links between almost every group of animal and almost every other group of animal in the entire fossil record. Yeah, the evolution has a handful. But you know what? The handful they use today will be discarded 10 years from now. And I say that because that's what they've been doing for the last 150 years. During the Scopes monkey trial, that famous trial in 1925, all the supposed transitional fossils they used were wrong. All the ones I grew up with in the 1970s, no one believes them today. So yeah, there's always a handful. Fine. But they need more than a handful. Now, I'm going to draw red lines on top of these. I'm going to push everything off to the side because I want to put into context all the mammals and birds I just showed you. That's what I was told initially, but this is what we now believe. that mammals and birds have always lived with dinosaurs throughout the entire dinosaur era. Now put a question mark at the end of birds because we don't have many bird fossils. Birds don't fossilize very well. But over here on the left, one of those groups, it was a group that supposedly evolved into birds. If that happened, when? Because birds with feathers and beaks and bird tails and bird lungs existed early in the dinosaur record, according to the evolutionists themselves. That's an evolutionary things right there. And I get to say, the Bible would predict that mammals, birds, and reptiles all lived at the same time, and now you just proved it. Thank you, sir. It's not just little mammals. This is a a rhinoceros-sized mammal that lived in the Triassic. Not a little mouse-like thing at the end of the dinosaur. A big old mammal, bigger than most dinosaurs living with dinosaurs. Our understanding of the fossil record has radically changed. Now, I am skipping over a lot of evolutionary claims because I'm trying to give you a bigger picture, and you can deal with the evolutionary claims as you learn more. There'll be a lot more stuff on creation.com about it. There are a bewildering array of birds and bird-like dinosaurs. Bewildering array. It's not easy to put them in a line. But that just tells me my God is a creative genius. We want nice little lines of demarcation. God doesn't care. He likes variety and lots of it. All right. Now, the second to last point. Did dinosaurs have feathers? Sir?
No, I do not think so.
I don't think so either. But does the Bible say dinosaurs did not have feathers? Well, no. Therefore, I don't care if they have feathers or not. Now, I'm a geek. I want to know. But if they have feathers, okay. If they don't have feathers, okay. But the evidence is scanty. Unlike the birds I just showed you, this is Sinosauropteryx, a poster child of the feathered dinosaurs. See that fuzz that runs down his back and down his... Yeah, we were beat over the head with this for over 10 years before Alan Fiducia, who's an evolutionist who believes in evolution, looked at this and say, under a microscope, you can see the animal's skin. This fuzz is underneath the skin. And it's a quote, it's obvious to anyone who looks. Why was it not obvious to the first people who found this fossil? Because they wanted dinosaurs to have feathers. The top two images are from a velociraptor arm bone. The second image is a zoom up of that rectangle in the first image. There's 6 little arrows there pointing at little bumps that they say are quill knobs. What's a quill knob? Well, the lower 2 pictures are from a turkey vulture. A quill knob is the attachment point of a feather to the bone. Feathers have to be anchored to something if they're gonna, when a bird comes in for landing and its feathers stick out, they change the shape of their wing. Well, they need muscles to do that, and the muscle's attached to the bone. As the muscle pulls and pulls and pulls and pulls, it leaves a little knob there. Ostriches don't have quill knobs. Penguins don't have quill knobs. Albatrosses don't have quill knobs. They can fly beautifully. They can't land very well. They tend to crash because they can't change the shape of their wing. They're like the U-2, the dragon lady, the beautiful plane. Once it flies, it's an awesome plane. But taking off and landing, real sketchy. But if not all birds have quill knobs, and none of the non-flying birds have quill knobs, nobody believes the velociraptor could fly. Why would it have quill knobs even if it had feathers? I'm totally not convinced here. We know that T-Rex did not have feathers, because what's a feather? What's a scale? A scale is just a lump on the skin. A feather is much more like a hair, only it's like a hyper-complex hair. Because our hairs just kind of poke out of our skin, right? There's a hole in the skin. The hair comes out of the hole. But feathers, first of all, they're wider, so you need a bigger hole. But also, after they pop out, they unfurl into very complex patterns. And they have to be grown that way inside the skin. I don't understand how that works. But multiple skin fossils from a T-Rex, there's zero evidence of any sort of feather because it would leave a hole in the scales. Okay, last point for you. None of that matters. The whole evolutionary question is irrelevant Because if I can show you that dinosaur fossils are not millions of years old, then evolution is not true. Do you think I can show you that dinosaur fossils are not millions of years old? Here's some electron microscope pictures that some friends of mine took. That's from the inside of a triceratops horn. In the middle, on the right, you see those two blobs with the spikes? Those are osteoblasts, bone cells, intact cells. Yeah, it's not fossilized. It's not permineralized. This is the original dinosaur tissue from the Hell Creek Formation in Montana. From the same formation, some evolutionary paleontologists found in T-Rex leg bone, stretchable, stinky, rotten tissue, blood vessels, red blood cells. After isolating individual cells from dinosaurs, they stained them with a stain I've used in a laboratory. It's called DAPI. It's a flat molecule that take a DNA double helix and it sticks into the double helix. And then when you wash the cells with water, it washes away everywhere except in the DNA. So it looks like there's intact nuclei with DNA. What? Oh, wait a minute. No. Bacteria and fungi live in these bones. They're in the dirt. Maybe that's bacterial DNA. Well, that's what the other two pictures are for. They stain the cells for protein that bacteria and fungi don't have, but you have it. Reptiles have it. It's called a histone. It's a protein that your DNA wraps around in the nucleus. Evidence of DNA? No. That's my field. That's genetics. No. DNA cannot last millions of years. Exclamation point. I mean, maybe thousands. I am shocked that after 4,500 years since Noah's flood, there's any DNA left. I am literally shocked. And if I'm shocked, these are supposedly 70 million years old. No, they're not. There's also carbon-14 in dinosaur bones. If the entire Earth was one ball of pure carbon-14, there would not be a single atom left in less than 1 million years. That's how fast it breaks down. You have about 1 out of every trillion carbon atoms in your body is carbon-14. You're breathing carbon-14 right now. About 1 out of every trillion carbon dioxide molecules is carbon-14. When you die, the carbon-14 in your body will be breaking down. And after 70 or 80,000 years, there will be none left. There cannot be carbon-14 in dinosaur bones if they're millions of years old. Soft tissue, evidence of DNA, and carbon-14 are all telling us that those fossils are not old. They're young, therefore Noah's flood and biblical timeline is true. 1 Peter 3:15. In your hearts, honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that's in you. You do it with gentleness and respect. Did I say this yesterday? We can stand confidently and competently on the Bible. We don't have to be jerks yelling at people. We've got good arguments and good answers. But it takes time to study and find those answers. And that's tonight, I'm trying to encourage you, give you a little bit, and encourage you to go find more. Creation.com, order some books from our website, Creation Magazine. We're here for you. We've got, on our website, you click on the Q&A section, there's a whole suite of dinosaur articles. We must have 100 articles on dinosaurs. Maybe, 50, there's a lot. Okay. I am done. I went long because I like dinosaurs. We're supposed to be ending in about 15 minutes, right? Thereabouts, okay. Because we have to get out of here in 45 minutes, right? That's when they lock the doors. Let's do some Q&A. But let's do it. We did Q&A last night? Okay, so I gave the rules. But for the people who weren't here last night, the rules are this. Please don't ask doctrinal questions that will split the room. And I'm not going to contradict something this church might teach. That would be unfair of a guest to do that. So if you ask me some doctrinal question like, end times theology or something, I'm going to go, great, we got a sermon topic for next week, and you have to come here to church next week. All right? Please keep your questions short with a question mark. I'll try to keep my answer short if I can, and I'll try to point you to a place that answers it more fully. We can do this. And please no questions about COVID-19. Because it doesn't matter how I answer, I'll make someone mad. And I have very strong opinions on this. I have 130,000 COVID-19 genomes on my laptop. I write computer programs to analyze genetic data. Don't challenge me. Anyways, sir.
All right, if you have any questions, just go ahead and raise your hand and I'll bring the microphone over to you.
How do you all live in a desert? I mean, it rained today and I still got sandpaper in my eyes. This is, sorry. I've been drinking water like crazy.
I'm confused about the flood because if the flood waters reached higher than the mountaintops, would the air have been pushed up or would they have trouble breathing on the ark?
I think that was a good question. There was a lot of echoing. If the water went very high, what happens after that?
Would the air be pushed up or would there be trouble breathing on the ark?
Air would have to be displaced upwards. But we don't have to have the oceans come up miles. We don't have to have that. First, we don't know how high the mountains were before the flood. Modern mountains are flood-derived mountains. Those layers in the Rocky Mountains right behind you, those are deposited flat during the flood, and then the mountains formed. Also, we can get water to come up on land without the water sinking through tsunamis. If plate tectonics is happening at some rapid pace, you're not going to get that little tsunami that happened in Japan a couple years ago. You can have big tsunamis that wash across continents. And it takes longer for the water to drain than it does to get up, so you can actually flood continents that are above sea level. We also have the ability, as crusts are moving and rocks are expanding in contraction, the continents can sink. So the question I get a lot is, was Mount Everest underwater? And people laugh, oh, you silly creationists, you need 5 miles of extra water. That's not true. Mount Everest didn't exist yet. Mount Everest, like the Rockies, is made of flood-deposited mud and rocks that later went and got bent upwards. You can see fossils on top of Mount Everest that used to be at sea level. So cool question. I think I answered it in a roundabout way. Okay, good. You're welcome.
Another question.
Dun, dun, dun.
I got one for you while
All right.
people might be thinking. So you briefly had mentioned the Ice Age.
Yes.
And I was curious if you might, given not a lot of time, if you could elaborate on when the Ice Age occurred, the forces that brought it about, and how it ended.
Okay. The Ice Age is a direct result of Noah's flood, period. We have a mechanism to generate an Ice Age that the evolutionists don't have. All they have is the Earth wobbles on its axis like every 30,000 or 100,000 years, and those periodic changes change a little bit the amount of sunlight striking the Earth by a little bit. And the reason why global warming is such a big deal in the evolutionary mindset is because they believe that a little bit of changes in the Earth's axis can have a radical effect on the climate. Therefore, a little change in carbon dioxide might have a radical effect on the climate. See where that how that comes? The Ice Age was produced by volcanoes after the flood. The volcanoes came from, in our current best understanding model, rapid tectonics that drove plates deep into the mantle. The first thing that's going to happen is any mineral with silica in it is going to melt and bubble up as lava and explode like Mount St. Helens and other what are called stratovolcanoes. That explosive expulsion of dust into the atmosphere would cool the Earth off. It would block out partially the sunlight. You don't have to cool the Earth off very much before you have eternal winter. But the Ice Age happened only in the north. It's not like the entire Earth was cold. There's still tropical rainforests and coral reefs in the middle of the Ice Age. The Ice Age doesn't affect the Bible lands like during Abraham's time. That's about when it would be happening, during about Abraham's time. The ice would start building up after the flood for several centuries, and it would melt back. I lived on Long Island in New York. Long Island has 2 forks. I lived in the South Fork. The forks are caused by 2 different glacial advances and retreats that left a pile of dirt behind. I lived on the edge of the Ice Age sheet. That's kind of cool. So think about this. Woolly mammoths in Siberia during the Ice Age. Elephants need to eat hundreds of pounds of food a day. They could not live in Siberia today, but they lived there by the millions during the Ice Age. Siberia was warmer than it is today during the Ice Age. Foxes, mice, beavers, fruit trees all lived in Siberia. There are islands 100 miles off the north coast of Siberia that are covered in elephant bones because woolly mammoths are elephants. In fact, natives today, you can go there if you ever want to go that far north, collect a bunch of bones and use them as a bonfire because bones are full of fat. They burn really nicely. And the Siberian natives have been doing that for centuries. 100 miles into the Arctic Ocean. Elephants? Yeah, the Arctic Ocean wasn't frozen. During the Ice Age, the oceans were warmer than they are today. Because of all the volcanism during the flood warmed up the oceans. That means lots of evaporation. And if you have all this dust in the atmosphere, the air is colder. So on the coastlands it's fine, but at high elevation and high latitude, you get snow. Massive amounts of snow. To the point where the oceans were drained down hundreds of feet. If you go in a submarine to the Great Barrier Reef today, which was dry ground during the Ice Age, so the evolution says 10,000 years ago, there was no Great Barrier Reef. It didn't exist. It was land. But if you go down 300 feet, you see a wave-notched platform 300 feet down under the ocean. That was the Ice Age. It's very biblical. And it fits in the biblical time frame very nicely. And it's not what most people think. Ice Age, creation.com, just type in Ice Age. There's a whole chapter in Creation Answers book about the Ice Age. There's a section in my new Biblical Geology 101 about the Ice Age. We have a lot to talk about Ice Age-wise. Excellent leading question. Thank you. I appreciate that. I could do talk on Ice Age. You want me to? No, we got to get here. Yes?
This may have to do with the hierarchy thing you were talking about earlier. But in terms of creationism, how do you respond to like vestigial organs in humans right now, like wisdom teeth, goosebumps, and other like parts of the human body that we don't find like useful or like need right now?
Excellent question. Are you challenged by the thought of vestigial organs? Okay, good. I just want to ask. I'm going to tell you something straight up. They don't exist. You're being lied to. This was an idea from the 1800s. If evolution is true, we should be evolving and changing and things like that. And so we should have some leftovers from our evolutionary ancestor. They had a list of about 80 of them. Every single one of them has a function. We have so many functions for the appendix, we don't know what the primary function is. The tonsils are part of your immune system. Very important part of your immune system. I had big tonsil problems in my 20s. I'm like, oh, doc, I keep getting sore throats. I need an appendectomy. He goes, we don't do that anymore. But my throat, he goes, we're going to just poke holes in it, make the holes bigger. So they drain better. Sure enough, I still have my tonsils. The little things right here in your eye, that's part of your tear ducts. I mean, there are no vestigial organs. They're not there. The whole idea that the human embryo goes through all the stages of evolutionary history as it develops. We go through the fish stage and the monkey stage. That's not true. It simply does not happen. Does the embryo have a yolk sac? No. We have an extra little thing that is very important for developing blood cells, and it's also where the reproductive cells hang out. The cells that become ovaries and testes, they're not inside the developing embryo. They're outside the embryo on the allantois. And at some stage of development, they form a conga line, and they march across the outside of the embryo and penetrate it and find the gonads, and that's when you have male and female differentiation. Yolk sac? No, it's not a yolk sac. There's no yolk. We never have gill slits, ever. We have a triple chin, but those folds become parts of the jaw and the face. They never have a respiratory function. We never have a tail. The human embryo never has a tail. There is a point, though, where the backbone is longer proportionally than the legs, because you don't need legs when you're in your mother's tummy. You need legs before you're born, but even then your legs are small compared to the body. The legs keep growing until adulthood. The embryo needs the backbone, because on the backbone, that's how all the body parts are organized. So the first thing that grows is the backbone. The legs are little teeny things, so it looks like there's a tail. But you know what? It's right here. It never goes away. It's always there. It's not like we lose the tail. Like the assumption is we had a tail, we lost it. It's not true. In fact, without the coccyx, you have a very hard time walking because your walking muscles are anchored to it. It's functional. All right, I can step down now. I answered you very aggressively on purpose because of 2 centuries of lying, and it makes me angry. And I said that because I really want to take this doubt that you might have and just knock it out of your head. And now when you see someone else with that, you can say, oh, actually, I don't remember all the details, but this guy, he jumped on me once. And I'm going to remember that very clearly. And you know what? I bet creation.com has a list of the former vestigial organs. Let's go look it up. Okay? Oh, junk DNA, that's the modern vestigial organ argument. Vestigial organs work until you find a function for them, and then it's no longer true. And junk DNA is full of amazing functions, but that's a whole other genetics lecture that I'm not going to give tonight. Cool question. You okay with that? All right. Usually I treat people more nicely than that, but
I had another question.
Okay.
Should we expect that if it is the case that humans and dinosaurs lived simultaneously, that we ought to expect to see human fossils with the fossils of dinosaurs? Is that a necessity?
Oh, no, that's a great question. Why don't we find human fossils buried with dinosaurs? Why not? I don't know the answer, but let me give you some possibilities. First, most of the fossil record is marine. Most fossils are clams. There's some corals and sponges things, but most of the fossil record is shellfish, clams and brachiopods. After that, there's some vertebrates, fish. After that, there's some land vertebrates, like dinosaurs, who seem to live in low-lying, swampy type areas. After that, you have other vertebrates like, some of the ones we saw there. There is an order to the fossil record. The flood started in the oceans. The first things buried are oceanic creatures. As the flood starts getting higher, dinosaurs are caught up. As it gets higher, more modern-looking things are caught up. We didn't even talk about the Cenozoic era. That's after the Tertiary, the Quaternary is after the Tertiary. We didn't even talk about that. There's multiple possibilities of why we don't find humans. My favorite one is the needle in a haystack argument. If there were 1 million humans alive at the time of the flood, I don't think so, because the earth is full of violence. It's only 1,600 years. It's kind of hard to get 1 million people from Adam and Eve. But if there was 1 million people alive, there'd be 1 human skeleton for every 32 cubic kilometers of rock. Maybe we just haven't found them. Or, if they lived in different places than dinosaurs, they wouldn't be buried with dinosaurs. Or, if they were buried last, the first thing to erode were the last things deposited. Human fossils could have been eroded away. Or they could have been subducted. Or there weren't lots of people around. Maybe people lived in one particular place and didn't live in the rest of the world, which is full of violence. You would not go near the oceans in the pre-flood world. Mosasaurs, I can go swimming. I mean, terror. Nothing but horror. People would be getting eaten constantly and violently. Yuck. So, I don't know the answer, but there's multiple possibilities, and it honestly doesn't really bother me that much. But cool question, though. I think Joel Tay and I just did a YouTube video, creation.com talk YouTube video on where are all the human fossils. Yes, so go to YouTube and just type in CMI, where are the human fossils, it'll come right up. We actually had a lot of people watch that particular video. Yes?
Why do evolutionists say that grass came about so late?
Why do evolutionists say grass came about so late? Because it is not found in any rocks that are dated from the Cretaceous and earlier. After the Cretaceous, at 65 million year layer, you've got all these, like the Miocene, the Pliocene and things. Grasses don't appear until way above the end of the Mesozoic era. That's why they say it. But now we see it in dinosaur dung and dinosaur stomachs. So they were wrong. We know that grasses are at least Cretaceous and earlier. That's why, just because the absence of it anywhere in the fossil record except for there.
To the point of human bones,
Yes?
would you speak to the tracks along the Paluxy River that have dinosaur tracks and human tracks among them?
Okay, this is a very delicate question. Creationists are split over this. In the Paluxy River in Texas, just south of Dallas, there is a particular fossil site where there appears to be human fossils alongside dinosaur fossils. Nobody at CMI believes this. Tracks. Oh, yeah, tracks. Sorry, footprints. I said fossils, yes. The human footprints alongside dinosaur footprints. No one accepts this. We know that a lot of creationists don't like that position that we've taken. We sent Emil Silvestru, he's a cave specialist, but he's a geologist, PhD geologist, to that site. He spent a whole summer there in their museum and at the site, and he walked away and wrote a report to CMI, and his report basically was, I am thoroughly unconvinced. I'm not saying that those aren't human footprints, but I can say that there are multiple alternate explanations that would make a formation like that. And I don't trust that all of the fossils that they show are actually real. I have to be careful with that. I'm not saying anyone's lying, but it's not good enough information for me to talk about in public. It's one of those things like, I want it to be true. So I put it in a box, I wrapped it up with a bow, and I put it in the back shelf of my mind saying, open in case of emergency. But I can't, it's something I can't validate, and there's enough questions that it's like, I'm not sure. Okay? Now, I have a pastor friend who has footprints from Paluxy and this big Baptist church in Chicago, right there in the sanctuary. I've spoken in that pulpit several times. I haven't mentioned because I don't want to make anybody mad. Anyway. Yes?
I think we have time for one more question.
Oh, I thought you were sitting there for her to ask a question. Okay, never mind. Sir.
Hey, I'm scared this is a stupid question, but I know there's this museum in Florida. Oh, sorry.
Louder, yes.
There's this museum in Florida where they have compiled a lot of these rocks with depictions of humans and dinosaurs. Allegedly, it's a creation museum. And
I really can't hear you, and I don't know
oh,
why.
I'm sorry. Am I talking real quiet?
I don't know what's going on, but talk slowly and clearly and like that, yes.
Is this better?
Like you're a rock star, right on the
Okay,
microphone.
so
There we go. Okay. There's a museum in Florida.
Right. They have these rocks. I'm spacing, sorry. I found in South America, and they have these depictions of humans and dinosaurs on them.
Yes.
I don't remember what culture it was, but
Yes.
the dinosaurs have these designs of like circles on their skin.
There-
I was wondering if dinosaurs had circles on their skin.
Well, there are a collection of stones from South America, from Peru. They're called the Ica stones. They have carvings of all sorts of things, and some of them have carvings that look a lot like dinosaurs on them. The problem is, none of the ones with dinosaurs are archaeologically excavated. They have no provenance. And in the world of archaeology, if you don't have a paper trail, like a picture of you taking it out of the ground, nobody believes you. Like, remember the Jesus bone box from 10 years ago? It's a bone box, and it had Jesus' brother. Which brother? James, brother of Jesus, on the side of it. No one knows where it came from. It appeared on the antiquities market, but it sure does look real. It's either a really good forgery or it's real, but I think it's real. But I want it to be real also, so I might be a little biased. It's hard to tell. So these particular ones, all the ones with dinosaurs are in the collection of a particular doctor in that town. No one knows where he got them. They have dinosaur-like things, but the problem is they have dinosaurs with their tails drooping, like the depictions of dinosaurs in the 50s and 60s, before we realized that sauropods held their tails upright. They could not droop. They actually physically could not bend like that. So it's old ideas of depictions of dinosaurs. I want it to be true. I don't believe it because there's too many questions. Just like actually worse than the footprints ones, because the footprints, they're there. It's a question of, are they human or not? These, though, we have lots and lots of these stones. None of the ones with dinosaurs we found that anyone can prove. I want it to be true. I just made some creationists mad with that one too. So let's stop asking the questions that, we'll do that. I guess we're done. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. I know that was hard to sit through, but I hope I encouraged some people.
Dr. Carter.